So this is Archer's version of Danger Zone, a little country music, Danger Zone. So that was the song you picked last time. We are joined by Dr. Theresa Larson. We're in the same state, but we're pretty far away from each other. I think we're about 6 hours. She's in
Not that.
Durango, Colorado. I'm in Superior, Colorado. Not a judgment call, not a gradient that we're superior. If anyone's not a fan of Archer, this is off of that randomness. So yeah, if you weren't here for our last episode, number 57, this is, I believe, number 90.
Oh wow,
So
okay.
it's been a little while. Yeah, I'm gonna turn that off. But yeah. So last time you wanted Top Gun's Danger Zone, and I told you about Archer. I assume you haven't watched it. That's okay, because I
Not
haven't.
yet.
And I'm gonna plead my guilt of the fact that I haven't followed up with a lot of the stuff you sent me. Between you had the 21-day mindfulness challenge, and I wanted to jump into that, and there was just a lot going on, and I'll have all the excuses, but I did not jump into that. And then you sent me a bunch of different resources, and I think it was shortly after our last recording, you were in the process of moving from California to Colorado, and you also did a course about an hour from where I'm at, and I wanted to go, but I didn't go. So I'm all the guilties, but I'm glad we are connecting here. How are you? How's Durango, Colorado?
Well, Bo, it's awesome. We love it. People are always asking, how has that transition from San Diego to Colorado? And I'm like, it's amazing. I mean, I think when you know what you want, we wanted to live in a mountain town for a number of years, and now we were able to, with our business, to kind of pick up and move wherever. So Durango is the spot, but don't tell anyone, okay?
Yes, I won't.
Because we are on the cool side of the Rockies, to be honest. If you were facing south, we're on the right side of the Rockies, okay?
Nice. Does the Coors Light just drip down your way? Is that how the
kind
Coors
of
Light works?
I've heard about this town. Like everyone that shares with me about their visits to Durango, it's like, oh yeah, the partying was so great. And I was like, oh, that's good to know. I mean, I've got like 2 littles under 4, so my partying is pretty much ending at 7:00.
There you go. Yeah.
So
Yeah, this is grown-up life, folks. Grown-up life. We're gonna dive into it, and for those not familiar, and I also made the same move from California, Southern California, here to Colorado. We're in slightly different parts, and I wouldn't be surprised if we end up in more of a mountain town in our next move. But we're definitely enjoying Colorado and all the things it has to offer for sure. So, but those not familiar with Dr. Larson, former Marine. I don't. Are you forever a Marine, or do you say former Marine? Is that
well, it's that's atypical of most services. So we always say former, other services say X, but I always just say Marine Corps veteran as well.
There you go.
It's just because once a Marine, always a Marine, really.
Right. And I've always respected and just marveled at the Marines in general. And when I was a freshman in college, my roommate quit college to join the Marine Force, and I went down to his graduation at Paris Island, South Carolina, and just looking around at the barracks and everything, and it was very inspirational, but did not get me to jump to enlist just then.
Didn't just like make you want to just join up right away?
Not quite. I mean, it literally was. I was like, I don't know, but yeah, it was is definitely something. The patriotism and all aspects, and of course at this point, the sacrifices that folks in the military make is pretty amazing. And you've talked about that in your book as well, and some of the struggles you had with that experience. And now you do a lot of work with, for those not familiar with veterans and especially the ones who are disabled. And that's our first topic here, is the inclusion in the fitness space for folks who have had any kind of, whether it's an amputation or just a disability of any kind. So tell us about that work and how we can, what we need to know.
Well, thankfully, we're in an era, if you will, and I hope the era keeps going, and it should have started a long time ago, but the DE&I space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so now there's just more awareness of how to be more inclusive in the workspace, but also in the fitness space. So I've gotten some chances to consult with companies on how they not necessarily include those of different races and genders, but those with disabilities, which is oftentimes forgotten about because equality of different races and genders is more of the kind of the hot topic and priority at the moment. But considering that 1 in 4 of us have a disability, whether it's invisible or physical, and disability, I also refer to those with disabilities as those with adaptive needs.
Mm-hmm.
Most people I've gotten to connect with who have disabilities, who are in the fitness space in particular, would prefer to be called adaptive athletes. So, but most people, I didn't also know the word disability and what it means. But yeah, so in the workspace, I've been able to consult with some wellness organizations who are vendors for different workspaces and how to make their products more inclusive. Because typically what you'll see is like a wellness offering is they've got all kinds of classes, but none of them that are for, say, if someone's in a wheelchair or someone who has a missing leg or a missing arm or a traumatic brain injury, right? Or MS even. And some of the programs wouldn't have to look too much different, but just the idea of like creating more inclusive language. Like, look, if you do have a missing limb or you are in a wheelchair, try it this way. It's a very simple cue shift,
Mm-hmm.
right? That a coach can add. But so that's kind of where I've been focusing a lot of my attention in that kind of that arm of my business is consulting with work with organizations, wellness companies, as well as fitness organizations. So I've had a few hire me to build out adaptive content and advise their coaches on what to do with the workouts because they say, what their workouts for everyone, but they're really not. So thankfully, there are more and more organizations paying attention to that, to include CrossFit, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Are you happy with the, not to put you on the spot about all that, but the recent changes that have happened in the hierarchy of CrossFit? Has that been a good thing in terms of inclusivity that you've noticed?
I mean, they've been very inclusive to the
Yeah.
adaptive community. I've worked with them quite a bit early on when I was working with Kelly Starrett and
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit. Obviously, with the old administration, I left. I didn't feel comfortable working with the leadership as was, but I think as things have been shifting, there's definitely been more of a shift because even some of my colleagues who are running the adaptive and accessibility aspect of CrossFit that is their whole life. Like that is their whole focus.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed seeing the changes and the fact that adaptive athletes are allowed at the games. I mean, because one, they have in the fitness space, they have such a great platform. They're well
Right.
known. And so it and what it does is not only, I mean, the adaptive athletes and anyone that competes in CrossFit, it's like the kind of the 1%, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, people are just trying to like stay healthy, not competing. But when other disabled or adaptive athletes see that, it shows them what's possible, right?
Yeah.
That's the big thing is even when I talk to these organizations, not just CrossFit, but other ones, um, I'm like, you just showing an adaptive athlete in your workouts
Mm-hmm.
shows an individual with a disability that they matter and that this is what's possible. So I think that it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear. And again, I think a lot of the groundwork you've laid down has probably helped in a lot of those ways, and that's awesome to continue that push into hopefully an evolution of what this fitness space is, and like you're saying, more inclusivity, and just the whole, yeah, DEI concept is
Mm-hmm.
something that's definitely something we need to do our part in, all of us. So I've had a few folks on this podcast who've kind of talked about some of those concepts and hope to
Mm-hmm.
continue to push that message as much as possible too. So yeah, that's exciting stuff. And I think that for me personally, as somebody trying to run my own business and do the work I'm doing, I think it always helps to have those reminders of, hey, like get involved in these ways. There's some easy ways you can do things to advance this concept. And like you're saying, even just some posts about this person in a wheelchair or whatever the thing
Yeah,
is, and that just pushes the envelope in the right direction, hopefully.
it does. So it shows, I mean, because the truth is like, especially with the fitness organizations, not necessarily wellness. depends on the wellness company, right? If they're just like EAP wellness programs, it's pardon my language, but some of them don't act like they give a shit,
Can
right?
you? I'm actually not familiar with what EAP is. Can you say what that is?
Employee assistance
Oh, okay.
programs.
Okay. Yeah.
So typically, when a company is like, "Yeah, we need a wellness program to fit our EAP model,"
Right.
well, then they get one, but it's typically like a cookie cutter cattle
Yeah.
call kind of approach, and maybe they get 2 to 5% usage of it,
Right.
maybe. But like the thing is, I'm hoping, and my goal with the inclusion stuff is that by 2027, right, most programs out there, the majority of programs, whether it's like the Nike, the TRXs, the CrossFits, the offer inclusion and adaptive type programming. So the Pelotons, right? They're not just audio and visual type adaptive programming, but like those, what are you going to do with someone in a wheelchair? Maybe Peloton, will offer an arm bike option, or their competitors, right? Like the and they also organization like platforms or schools, I should say, that teach exercise physiologists or your governing bodies for personal training offer adaptive training, not as like a specialty, but like as part of the regular training. Because if 1 in 4 of us have a disability, then and our obviously most people go into being a personal trainer or a PT or in the health profession to help people, right? So like, well, do you want to just help people that look like you, or do you actually want to help anyone?
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm going with it. And thankfully, it's interesting, just like putting that out in the universe over the last number of years, have gotten work and opportunities to kind of help grow that mission, right? I get to work with FitOps, which is University of Health Performance out of Bentonville. They like bring in veterans and they teach them how to be fitness professionals in the wellness and fitness space. And so they bring on my adaptive training, and then TRX, and then a couple other organizations. And then hopefully by the end of this year, I'll be an assistant professor for K-State, which is a great exercise phys program, but they want to incorporate the adaptive training as part of their elective, maybe eventually part of their regular curriculum, but at least for an elective to start for their exercise phys majors. So, like I think that because of these more innovative organizations are like, yeah, obviously we want that. It's given me confidence, if you will, and also just reassurance that most organizations should want this over time. Because if they're not, they're leaving out a huge percentage of people.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing coming up for me is I actually just did an episode with Physiology First, and I don't know if you've seen any of those their posts or you heard of those guys. They have 3 kind of brands, and I think they should consolidate. I think they all have different aspects of what they do. There's the Distance Project, Breathe to Perform, and Physiology First. So you've seen some of their stuff. Have you seen some of their things at all? David
No.
Bidler, they're up in Maine. They're just trying to grow. They do a lot of work with their 501c3 nonprofit, and they have a physical gym, and they bring a lot of high school kids in. And basically, their big push is physiology first, meaning, and they've done some work with Andrew Huberman, who's gained a lot of popularity in these last few months and year, and just talking about the fact that like if we understand our physiology and how breathing can control our nervous system, that might be a skill that we can master as teenagers, even that will help us prevent going on ADHD medication and these diagnoses that are just getting thrown around. It's like, oh, this kid's misbehaving, give him a pill. Being like, hey, wait a minute, why don't we take him here every Friday or whatever after school and teach him some of these breathing concepts and see if that doesn't improve his physiology. And just at the end of the day, we all do have more or less the same physiology, whether we have some adaptations we need to make around that, but understanding that and giving us the ability to drive that car a little bit smoother, faster, more empowered. They're doing some stuff to try to change kind of that, especially the mental health diagnoses that get thrown around. And so they're doing really interesting stuff in that regard. So that was a few episodes ago. They had a big announcement of their new project they're trying to do. I think that was last Monday. So yeah, I think.
Okay. I'll have to, yeah, I'll check it out
Yeah, I'll
for
send that
sure.
to you. And then your next thing we want to talk about is just government work. And tell us a little bit where you are in that space and yeah.
Yeah. Well, the government work is, I think for any PT or health provider out there, there's a lot of work around the wellness in the government. So what I do, so there's three arms to our business, right? The inclusion, adaptive consulting, the government contract work, and then just the consumer stuff like the M2 experience, right? It all fits under one umbrella, like giving people the knowledge and tools to live physically and emotionally free. In the government, it takes just a long time. So we've gone to
Mhm.
bat, I don't know, probably over 24 times for different RFPs, requests for proposals,
Mm.
and lost most of them.
Hmm.
We finally, it's just the
The
way it is.
nature
Like
of the beast.
yeah,
Yeah.
the nature of the beast. You have to have past performance
Hmm.
to win, but in order to win, you have to have past
Right.
performance.
Right.
Anyway, so it's like this like confusing thing, but we finally did win our first contract. Going from 0 to 1 is actually pretty tough.
Yeah.
So we finally did it, and like I've teamed with people like the Mayo Clinic, like
Mm.
organizations. So it's not like we've teamed up with people who are new to this. Like
Right.
we've lost with some big organizations, but we finally won one within the VA. So we're getting to work with whole health. So providing employees right now and then veterans whole health information via their new app, the whole health VA app, which you
Hmm.
can download now. Anybody can download it.
Right.
To be able to view the content we're providing, it would be just employees, but it's very exciting because it's the one very forward-thinking program within the VA, and it's taken a little over 2 years to even
Wow.
win
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
So I bring that up because a lot of when I do these podcasts, in particular, I know you have a great following with trainers and PTs. Like, um, I think it's important to know that you don't have to just do PT practice, one on one. There's a lot of other ways to
Right.
help people. And in the government, if that was something you wanted to do, like work with the VA or work with the DoD, it is possible, but it takes a while. So it's almost like if you want to plant that seed, start
Hmm.
now and then just
Yeah.
anticipate and expect that it's going to take a handful of years before things come to fruition. But it's very rewarding work, I have to tell you that. So
Yeah.
because it's
I
in a
can
way the
imagine.
government's like, okay, you tell us what you want to create. And
Right.
so as I provide the inclusive training in my
Hmm.
wellness. Like if you were talking about sleep here, like we did a video on sleep, it's like, well, okay, we talk about sleep, but then let's say if you have a spinal cord injury or you've got, a TBI, heat regulation, temperature regulation might be
Hmm.
difficult. So this is what you want to think about. So
Yeah.
I'm thankfully with the government, there is in the work I'm doing, there's a little more free reign in terms of what I can provide and get creative, as long as I don't use obscenities.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Play
it's
within some rules for sure. Yeah.
yeah, some rules, clothing, attire, that's
Yeah.
also important, like appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. And that kind of ties into our next thing of behavior change and relationships. And again, you mentioned the M2 project, and that's the Men Talking Mindfulness. Is that, or is that right?
No, so M2 is basically our Movement RX like
Sorry. Yeah.
consumer product, if you will. Like, so there's the government stuff, but the consumer stuff is like what you see on social
Mm.
media and then our website. So we call it the mindfulness and movement experience, which is the M2 experience. And up until this last month, it's been, a 21-day experience that people can purchase. It's a one-time deal, and they get like 21 days of where we guide them emotionally and physically, kind of build their intelligence and get them to start to create a habit. And the power in the experience has been like there's two main things that help really change behavior. One is skin in the game. You pay for it,
Mm.
right? You're not just getting something for free.
Those who pay
Yeah,
attention.
Right. And then the second one is social support. So there's a lot of social support for people, and they oftentimes the feedback we get is like, oh my gosh, I totally thought I was alone with this, and
Right.
I realize I'm not. And our audience with that has really been like veteran and like small business owners, like just so happens like a lot of people like myself, right, who are needing the social support. They're running a business. Their life is freaking nuts and chaotic. It's not just veterans, but like we find that small business owners really are gravitating towards this product, if you will. But it's been nice to like team up with John McCaskill, who's a retired Navy SEAL commander, who teaches, when people like look at his career, he's like going from 24 years in the SEAL teams to being a mindfulness meditation coach. It's like, well, okay, tell us about that, bro.
Yeah.
So what he does is he works with us, and then he also runs this podcast called Men Talking Mindfulness with his buddy Will, who also is a teacher on our platform. He's a yoga instructor. But what's cool about it is, those guys are redefining masculinity.
Yeah.
In a way, like, these guys actually are like some of the most empathetic guys I've ever worked with. So compassionate, like good friends. And so it's been nice to work alongside them on this project, because I'm sure anyone listening out there, if you work alone and run a business alone, it can get kind of lonely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there are other people out there doing it, but it's actually really nice to have a brother who I work with, right? So we've teamed up, and right now we're kind of in the middle of redefining what that offer is for people. Is it going to be 21 days? Is it going to be a bit longer? Because we find people, when they're done with the 21 days, it's like, I want more. So we may make it a longer type approach. But more will, if you want, stay tuned on the website, and we'll be announcing that in the coming months. But yeah, it's been a very rewarding journey to grow the experience and like actually kind of pay attention to what matters to people, which is skin in the game and then social support. And while people love the content, they find that the social support matters the most, and come to find out, according to behavior change research, that is what keeps people going.
Right. Yeah. And we've seen a lot of that. We talked about CrossFit. That seemed to be one of the biggest, you could argue the physiology and the programming and constantly varied versus constantly random workouts. But yeah, the community piece seemed to be the biggest kind of successful part of that, and the most successful gyms, CrossFit's over the last, whatever it is, 15 years now that it's been a thing, is seem to be the ones that have the best community. And that there seems to be a lot of that accountability. Like, hey, why hasn't Dr. T shown up? And, she usually comes to the 8 a.m. class. Like, somebody go check on her, what's going on. So, and there is that accountability for sure. And, we do have all these social media pieces. And I challenge a lot of folks who I know post a lot about now. We're recording this, was it 2 nights ago? Will Smith smacked Chris Rock in the face. Everybody's posting about that at the Oscars. But I say, hey, I see you posting all the time on social media. But you're also going on this weight loss journey. Maybe we should start posting what you're doing there, and post the journey, not just wait until you lose 50 pounds and then let's post the success. Post the journey, because that's the accountability, and people are always going to be supportive. Like, I've seen people posting and like, yeah, way to go, you're in the gym, way to go, you're cooking chicken and broccoli or whatever it is. So that accountability piece, for sure, it's something that, and like you said, in the behavior change science, and I think we're going to see a lot of that get caught up, because like you were talking about the government work and things like that being very slow and taking time, and the bureaucracy, just research takes time too. And I think with the way social media is adapting, we're starting to see slowly more and more of that, the positives we can take out of that social media context, and how to use that.
I think well, everyone's a little bit different, but even though, and you can use social media for a very positive, like for the social support. However, nothing will ever equate to like connecting with someone one-on-one or personally over the phone or in person. So I've had to make a choice too in my own work, and really take into consideration like what I need as a person myself. And it does, I found I love connecting on LinkedIn, because it's a lot of business owners and
Mhm.
veterans and whatnot.
A lot
But
less noise.
there's a lot less noise. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
more focused noise, I should say.
Except for I'm gonna quickly call out all the like, hey, I'm looking to expand my network. Well, are you
Yes,
down to
no,
and like those people? But yeah,
yeah, that's pretty annoying. But
yeah.
I've found like, I've had to choose in a way to say, okay, social media is great for brand building and for connecting and meeting people. But my business, I've chosen to not make my business reliant on it.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that, well, I'm the principal in the business, so I'm running it. And yeah, I have some people helping me with social media, but it's more of the connecting in person, the phone calls, the um, like putting yourself out there, like doing talks and doing podcasts. But I've just found like I, at the end of the day, like I want to be more present to my family,
Hmm.
and the addiction that social media can create of just like
Right.
constantly checking and being on can be
Right.
detrimental to your health as well as relationships. So
Hmm.
I've had to, you know, really take inventory over the course of
Mm.
my PT career. Like, I've worked with people who care so much about me following them.
Right.
And I'm like, I have to like look at that and say, okay, well, I see where you're coming from, but if our
Hmm.
relationship is reliant on me following your every move,
Right.
then I don't think we should have a relationship,
Yeah.
or this isn't going to work out, especially professionally. So these are grown adults telling me,
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
grown adults telling me this. So I've had to kind of look at like, okay, even whenever I post and go on, I'm like, why am I going on?
Mm.
Because I'm going on to share this
Right.
because I want this effect,
Hmm.
ideally. I'm not going on to say, look at me, I'm so great.
Right.
Or I literally ask myself that all the time. And yes, I definitely have posted to say, look at me, believe me. Because that's with social media. I mean, it kind of creates a culture of
That's
that.
the dopamine.
But I am conscious of like, and I think everyone, they're the brass tacks of business and timeless tactics of business is meeting, managing, and motivating people, like actually connecting with human beings.
Hmm. Hmm.
So maybe you like someone and what they're posting, but connect with them.
Right.
Like I just reached out to, I talked on a panel with a guy who runs GoRuck, Jason McCarthy, right? I don't know him very
Hmm.
well. He's a Army, I believe he was Special Forces Army, but I was like, I really liked what he's doing, and I'd love for him to support his organization, to support my adaptive stuff because it fits in line.
Hmm.
But instead of just going on and liking all of his shit, it was like, I'm just gonna email him and like get on
Right.
a phone call, and that was way better,
Yeah.
Or uh, yeah. So I think it's important for young people, especially, right? Like we're more emotionally intelligent, if you will, Bo. I mean, I would say for the most part, but like for young kids to realize, hey, you have a choice, build those friendships in person, like
Hmm.
really go after and develop great relationships in person and put the
Yeah.
social media aside. And I would say if anyone can develop their business um, from the human relations aspect,
Hmm.
you will develop very deep ties versus very superficial in a lot
Yeah.
of them, right?
Yeah.
So that's my like little soapbox.
I love it. There's tons of resources that kind of touch on a lot of these aspects you're talking about, and some of the more popular books out there, and it's great. And actually, yeah, my wife and I, we're not allowed to. We've given ourselves that rule that we don't go on during weekends. So Saturday, Sunday,
Yeah.
I'll go on and check. And like one of my ways to connect with people is I go on Facebook and I wish everyone whose birthday it is, like, hey, just checking in.
Yeah.
And again, Facebook, to your point, has a lot of superficial relationships. I might have just accepted a friend request because we have 200 physical therapy people in common. And it's like, okay, yeah, you're probably, like, cool. Let's see if this is a real thing or whatever. And then I'll check in and be like, hey, happy birthday. Like,
Yeah.
where you at? How we doing? And sometimes people either ignore it. Sometimes people are like, wow, like I don't get videos. Like I send people a video with my dog and I'm like, hey, happy birthday. Hope you're doing good. And either that leads to something, and sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't, which is okay. But that tells me again, like, let me clean out some of my friends on Facebook. But yeah, so weekends we don't do any social
Good.
media
Yeah.
to allow for her and I to connect better, and for us to again check in with our friends, and make sure that that's something we're doing, whether we're being mindful of going for a
Yeah.
hike in nature or whatever it is. And so yeah, just lack of social media, it is 100% that dopamine addiction, which is an interesting book for anyone interested, is Dopamine Nation by Anna Lemke, who's a colleague
Okay.
of Andrew Huberman at
Okay.
Stanford.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did that for, actually, it was the Physiology First had a book club that they were doing, and we talked about that. And basically, one of the things she talks about with, she's seen a lot of people with these addictions, and she actually recommends a dopamine fast. So you actually like no phone, no Instagram for, or whatever it is that's your addiction, for however long, and then you start to reorganize your hormones, reorganize your dopamine release, and you're not reliant on that
Yeah.
situation. And so it's fascinating stuff from all that.
Well, it is. So what's interesting is I think having kids
Mm,
is also kind of made me cut out the BS,
mm-hmm,
right? Of the hamster wheel, if you will, of that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because like my kids will literally act out if I'm on my phone in front of them. So I will typically, if I have to make a connection call or something, make a phone call, which I try not to ever do when I'm with them, especially after my work day. Or I don't even make any phone calls before 8:30 a.m. because my phone is off until 8:30 a.m.
Mm,
Um, because I want to be present to them. But what has helped me in the past, and this is something I learned from my dad, he's like, it's like wins. Like when I was really struggling in softball for like a few games and I really sucked ass. He was like, well, remember what it was like when you didn't.
mm,
You can go back there because there's this thought of like, I'll never be able to get back to what I did,
right.
or how am I going to get out of this rut? And he was like, you just have to remember what it was like. Like, remember what it feels like. Go back to that physiological feeling. Even though he wasn't like saying that word, he was like, go
Right,
back to
right,
the
right.
feeling. But the same thing with social media, like it never makes me feel awesome.
Yeah.
Um, Even if I'm doing something good on there, it just feels overwhelming and distracting for me,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest.
Yeah.
And so I know how that feels, and I remember that or recall that. And like, so when I'm tempted to like go on at night, I just, or go on when my kids are around, I remember that feeling. Like this isn't going to actually this is taking me further away from my attention with them,
Mm-hmm.
which actually my attention is where my happiness is. So the more attentive I am to a specific task, the happier I am. So I
Right.
like kind of like talk, obviously think my way out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to remember, like just because other people are doing it or you see the world engrossed in this thing doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah, and in our fourth topic, we just kind of hit on a few of those points. But yeah, being a mom, and I
Yeah.
think I try to acknowledge this because I was raised mostly by a single mom,
Oh,
and so I always try to acknowledge mothers in general. It is probably the most important job in the world, especially those who do it
yeah.
well. And so I try to kind of throw random Happy Mother's Days on all throughout the year, not just one day of
Yep.
the year where we appreciate motherhood. Because yeah, it's a pretty big thing. So happy Mother's Life
Thank
Year,
you.
existence to you. But yeah, tell us a little bit. You wanted to touch on being a mom. You threw a few things at us already, but yeah, let's dive a little deeper there.
Well, motherhood has helped me in every area of my life. Cut out the BS, like just the unnecessary things, relationships, everything that, because I want, like, I've asked myself, what do I want? What kind of mother do I want to be? Like, I was raised by a single father, right? My mother passed when I was really young. So I do remember her. I remember what what she was like, but it was mostly my dad being a mom dad to
Mm,
me. And and so I've had to like ask myself, okay, what kind of parent do I want to be?
mm,
And I want to be a present parent. And I mean, having my father was a priest in the end and like would do all this marriage counseling. He'd also do like end of life ceremonies, you
Wow.
know, that
Yeah.
they do for, and so, you know, everyone to the T who've had children is like, oh my gosh, I totally miss those younger years. I wish I was more present, or I worked so much and I wasn't, you hear those stories all the time. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to be that story. Like I want to be the present story, you know?
Or the other popular one is, oh, they did the best they could. You know,
Yeah,
that's the old school kind
right.
of. And yeah, let's not. Yeah, I agree. For whatever it's worth, is yeah. It's a good thing, I think, to avoid doing the best. And everyone does the best they can, but hopefully it's a little bit like, yeah, no, I knew it was genuine. I felt the love, and like it wasn't just hustling to make money and put
Yeah.
food on our table, that kind of thing. There was a deeper connection that we're talking about with some of these other topics too. So
Well,
yeah.
it's been wonderful for me. Like I didn't start, so when I gave birth to Magnus, I was like in this I shared this actually on the Men Talking Mindfulness podcast. I was like in this shit show of a
Mm,
business, like the business I had run and built, I did not like
mm,
when I was pregnant. Like I was like, what am I doing? Who are these people I'm working with? You know, and
right.
they're not bad people. It's just like my business was shifting. I was working alongside, I think there was a medical company right next door to my business that was like basically enlarging males' genitalia and women's whatever, just to, you know, help them feel more, which, okay, that's maybe a medical necessity for some, but it
Mm,
was just kind of like injection city, right?
yeah.
Let's do an injectable for this. Let's do an injectable for that. And so I was like next to and aligning with people that didn't necessarily fit my morals and values.
Hmm.
But then also, I was in a business that I didn't want to be in when I was giving birth to my son. And I was like, I am working in a business and my life is around this business. I want my business to be around my life,
Mm,
not the other way around. And so, and yeah, like I'd started it working in CrossFit and I'd traveled all over. But then there was this like interim period where I'd stopped traveling. Now I was just running this practice and maybe we were looking to grow it, but we weren't growing it in the right direction that I wanted. And it kind of just ended up like that. And that's what happens with a lot of people like, oh, I ended up here and I'm not sure how.
yeah.
Yeah, like a year or two in, thankfully it wasn't too long. I was like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
And so having my kid was like the weeding process started. I was like, oh, fuck no, this is done. This is done. We're moving here. It was
Yeah.
very hard though. Like I had to let go
Mm,
of most of my staff. We left San Diego, like this big office in
mm,
San Diego. We started doing like mobile pop-ups again. But it was really life-giving for me. Like I had
mm,
more freedom with my baby.
right.
And we started to like kind of build the seeds for what we're doing now then. And so even then we were like, we want to move to Durango and like, you know, run a wellness business. But this was 4 years ago, right? 4.5 years ago. And so now to be sitting here talking to you and having like put that intention out there and worked towards it wasn't fucking easy at all.
No.
But like, you know, was meaningful because now our work does surround our life.
Hmm.
And we work with people who get it, who are like, yes, I'm in this. I want to impact these people. They're not just trying to punch a clock and, you know, make so much money an hour. It's like they're kind of in they're, you know, in business, you're going to meet all kinds, like people who just want to punch a clock. All
Right.
right, fine. But I prefer to surround myself with people now that I know who want to grow and actually make a change in the world
Hmm.
versus just, you know, check a box or
Right.
punch a clock. So motherhood did that for me. It was like,
Mm,
fuck, I do not want this to get in the way of my attention with my children.
right.
Absolutely not. And
Yeah.
so the kind of the mother, like, you know, the mother bear, mama bear came out in me.
Yeah.
And it's been there ever since, you
Hmm.
know. And the one thing I'll leave everyone with is this concept, though, that I think is powerful for any parent, is that like, I don't want my kids to go through any of the pain.
Mm,
Excuse me, I'm kind of getting over a cold still. Any of the pain that I experienced, but I know they will experience pain,
hmm.
and I can't control that. But what I can control is making them strong.
Hmm.
Like I can help make them strong. So, and I'm the best example for that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of fun topics and themes that come out of that. The one that came up real quick for me is ruthless prioritization, which is like a term that's I have written some on a couple of different parts of my of the apartment here, of just, yeah, making sure you're not wasting time on just mindless scrolling on the internet and having deeper conversations. You mentioned the men talking mindfulness. I've been in a men's group for pretty much since we moved here to Colorado. I do once a week, and those are things where, again, it gives you that chance to reflect and think about, again, longer, deeper, more meaningful connections, purpose, all that stuff. There's a lot of deep things, and that's actually one of the reasons I do this podcast. I call it Bono Stuff. I want to know more stuff, and I want to connect with
Yeah.
awesome humans like you, making differences in the world and going on these journeys. And it's also the reason I got my tattoo, which is always weird to do,
Oh,
which is, it's a
I love.
unilome, and I have my Whoop watch at the end there, but it's the journey and the path to enlightenment. It's a Buddhist and also a couple of different religions use that symbol, but the point being, like, we're somewhere along that journey, and it sounds like you've had, even in the last few years, just different aspects of that journey, and we don't always reach enlightenment, but as long as we're striving for that, it's a constant reminder for me to, like, hey, stay on a little bit of a focus, and just keep reassessing, are you moving in the direction you want to actually move in, or are you
Yes.
just kind of, like you said, punching that clock in a long time ago for me. And it was actually social media. I'll finish up with this. And I want to be respectful of your time. I know you have another call coming up, but I would always see people on like Facebook commenting something like, "Hey, it's Monday, can't wait for the weekend to party again," or whatever. And I was like, what about like the 5 days? Like 5 out of your 7 days, 40 hours a week it's a pretty significant chunk of your life. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, we all got to get paid, and like there's that aspect to it. But yeah, so those of us who have the privilege of pursuing our passions, and have been able to make that step, like you said, it's not easy. It's not always easy. It's usually not easy. Very few folks are just going to easily switch and have success, but
Hmm.
it is going through a lot of those failure struggles, and again, that's kind of what that tattoo shows. But anyway,
Love it.
we'll wrap it up. I got to be respectful of your time, and again, always
Hmm.
appreciate you being on here.
Yeah, it's
Anyone who
awesome.
wants more, go back to episode 57. I'll put that in a link to the show notes, and anywhere else folks can connect with you. True connection only, uh, deep
That's right.
connection if you want, and where they can find more of what you're doing.
So you can go to movement-rx.com and reach out to me there. I get all of those emails. And then for the best like social media platform where I can connect with you, as long as you don't ask me for like, a superficial connection on LinkedIn, you can reference this podcast even. I'm Dr. Theresa Larson on LinkedIn. So
I got
yeah, feel
the
free.
little banner there for
Oh,
the website.
so legit, Bo. So
Yeah,
legit.
so legit. It's too legit to quit. All right.
That's right.
Um,
So great.
so yeah, we'll cut it off there. And
Good.
again, always a pleasure chatting. I'm gonna send you that country version of Danger Zone. I'm not gonna
Please,
put it. And
please.
yes, and we'll talk soon. And again, exciting. Can't wait to see again what these next few months, even years, will take that journey you're on, and again pushing that all
Same.
the awesome stuff you're doing. So I'm excited to see, and again, any way I can help, and hopefully we do get to meet up in person soon here in Colorado. We're only 6 hours away.
I'm sure we will. We'll be here for life, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Uh, so I know we'll connect, and I appreciate what you do too, Bo. You keep me in the know with what's going on with your
Trying.
podcast. I appreciate that.
So it's on record that we're going to meet up in person, and then within the next 12
Yes.
months. That's what I'm going to throw out there is
Okay. Okay.
maybe in Colorado Springs, because I know you go there to see John McCaskill where he
Yeah.
is. And
Yeah. I'll
that's
give you a
also,
heads up
if
next time.
you mentioned you might want to do the dry needling course, and that's where the guy, he's actually in the Air Force. He's active duty still, and he's the one who teaches the dry needling course I took. So I'll put you guys in
Oh,
touch,
that
and
would be
I think
great.
he's doing one soon too. So that's Nate Silver, I believe. But I'll get you the info. We're gonna sign off, guys. Hope you got at least
Okay.
1% better. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, rate, review, all that stuff that keeps us growing. And